Hey, it's your girl Charlene. It's your award-winning Google Cloud Trainer of the Year and the Difference Maker of the Year. Listen, I've been obsessed with two things: Reality Transurfing, which is a great book if you haven't read it, and Josh Johnson. Love his humor, love everything he does. I was watching YouTube yesterday and I saw a video that put it all together for me. It made me ask, is Josh Johnson consciously using the principles in Reality Transurfing? So I uploaded two sources. One was the book and one was that video that did the review. And here's how it went. Hey there, you made it. All right, let's go deeply into what I did to get the results I got. First of all, we're inside NotebookLM, and I've already asked it the question, and now we'll look a little more deeply at the answer. Notice how I'm just scrolling through the answer here, not really going to stop and read it, because the point is, let's just save it as a note. Once it gets saved as a note, you can turn it into a source. Once it's a source, then you can click on the source. Let's find it. There, I think starving the pendulum, that's the note that was saved as a source. Then head over to the chat, scroll way to the top, click mind map. And now what it's doing is it's generating the mind map that goes with that note. And here we have it. Look at the main thing, that's the name of the note. It has two main topics, the Reality Transurfing, what is a pendulum? Let's expand. Now the best part about NotebookLM is you get this visual of the relationship of information, how it relates to other information. And just for fun, let's keep expanding so that each topic has subtopics. I'll let you read them. I don't have to read those to you. But it's really fun to see how topics, no matter what they are, can be organized in a way that's easily consumable by you. All right, I will read this one thing about ineffective responses to something like a pendulum, according to Transurfing. When you fight against it, it is just as happy to receive your energy as if you were fighting for it. So yikes. So Josh Johnson, does he do the things that it says you should do? Let's look at Josh Johnson's node on the mind map. So here we are. Let's just drill into the first point. We don't want to do this all day. You can do this yourselves. But he doesn't feed the pendulum. He doesn't yell. He dismantles by describing carefully. Let's click that. Whenever you click any one of the nodes on a mind map, you get a in-depth description of where NotebookLM found that reference, and then you can also communicate that to the people that you work with. Look at the details that are really fleshing out how they found that node to go on that part of the mind map. Awesome. I know, we got to get to the podcast. Let me show you how to do it. Go to the Studio tab on NotebookLM, choose the Customize button before you generate. Here's why. You want to teach the podcasters what to talk about. I told it focus on the overall effectiveness of Josh Johnson's surgical precision in applying the core principle of not feeding the pendulum. Play around with whether he is aware of pendulums or if he was just born this way. So here are the results. I showed the picture of me pressing the play button, but what I'm really doing is just going to paste in all 11 minutes and 30 seconds of the podcast so you can listen to it. The only thing is I don't really have any avatars to show you. There's no one talking except the AI. So enjoy these visuals while you listen.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something pretty fascinating. We've got sources looking at comedian Josh Johnson's style, his very sharp, almost, surgical way of doing comedy, and connecting it to this philosophical concept called reality transurfing, which honestly sounds pretty out there at first.
It does, yeah. It's an unusual pairing.
So our mission today is really to unpack how Johnson seems to, dismantle things without actually going head to head. And then we want you to think about this. Is he consciously using these transurfing ideas, these pendulums our sources talk about, or is he just, naturally brilliant at this? Is it instinct?
Right. And it's worth saying up front, the sources we looked at, they really focus on one big example to illustrate this. They talk about what they call the Trump EGA pendulum.
Okay.
And they use Johnson's approach to that as a kind of case study for how these principles might work in, a very charged real-world situation.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's start there then. This core idea, Pendulums. What exactly are they according to Reality Transurfing?
Okay, so imagine like a huge crowd all chanting the same thing, or maybe everyone getting obsessed with the same news story, or even a fashion trend.
Huh.
Transurfing calls these energy-based information structures. Basically, when a bunch of people focus their thoughts and energy in the same direction, on the same idea or figure, it creates this thing, this structure, a pendulum.
An energy structure. Okay. So how does that become, destructive? Why would you need to dismantle it?
Well, that's the tricky part. Once they get going, they sort of take on a life of their own. The sources say they feed on the energy of their adherents.
Right.
They want to grow, establish power, and they're kind of indifferent to the individual's fate. Their main goal is just self-perpetuation. They need energy, your energy.
Okay, that sounds a bit creepy. How do they hook people in? How do they manipulate you to get that energy?
It's usually through emotions. They try to get you off balance, things like fear, anxiety, guilt, but also strong positive emotions like excessive admiration or fervor. And they can play on stuff you're already dealing with, like psychological complexes or negative habits. Anything to get an emotional reaction, really.
And this connects to something called excess potential. That sounds key.
It's absolutely crucial, yeah. Excess potential happens when we give something unreasonable or artificial significance. Basically, too much importance.
Like obsessing over something.
Exactly. You're desperate for a specific outcome, or you think something is way more amazing or terrible than it objectively is. That extra intense energy, that importance you're projecting, that's the imbalance. That's the excess potential.
And pendulums feed on that imbalance.
That's how they get their power. Precisely. Starve them of that importance, that excess potential, and they weaken.
Okay, this is where it gets really counterintuitive for me. The sources say actively fighting a destructive pendulum only feeds it more energy. So getting angry, protesting loudly, expressing outrage, that actually helps it.
That's what transurfing claims, yeah. It goes against every instinct, doesn't it? But the idea is, if you engage with strong emotions, anger, fear, even righteous indignation, you're broadcasting on its frequency. You're literally giving it the energy it craves. Any strong reaction, positive or negative, as long as it carries that charge of importance, just fuels the fire.
So if fighting doesn't work, what does? How do you disarm these things according to this transurfing idea?
Well, the advice is to not engage on its terms. You try to ignore it, or make it fall through, or extinguish it, primarily by reducing importance, detaching emotionally, becoming more of a detached observer instead of getting swept up in it.
Like stepping back mentally.
Exactly. And you respond in ways that create dissonance with its frequency. Like, imagine trying to push someone who isn't pushing back. They just sort of sidestep. The energy doesn't connect. The pendulum falls through empty space because you're not giving it that expected reaction, that fuel.
Okay, this is where Josh Johnson comes back in, right? The sources are saying his comedy style somehow does this, that he expertly applies these transurfing principles to specifically the Trump-Mangier pendulum they mentioned.
Yeah, that's the connection they make. It's quite striking.
Because his style is really different. You don't see the shouting and sweaty outrage that the sources mention. No sledgehammers. It's more like surgical strikes of deadpan truth. Like using surgical scissors, they say. He's so calm. He doesn't yell. He doesn't rant. He doesn't even sweat. He just kind of whispers the truth.
And that calmness is key. It directly connects back to that principle. Fighting a pendulum is useless because it means feeding it with your energy.
Okay.
By staying calm, unemotional, Johnson avoids radiating that anger or indignation that the pendulum would normally feed on. He's not matching its frequency. He's not giving it fuel.
There's that great line in the source. He doesn't destroy Trump by shouting over him.
Yeah.
He dismantles him by describing him carefully, casually, brutally. It's like he's taking it apart piece by piece without a big fight.
Exactly. He's not engaging in the shouting match. He's changing the conditions around the shouting match, removing its foundation, undermining it quietly.
So a big part of that dismantling is this reducing importance idea we talked about. Johnson seems to target Trump's bravado, his ego, the sense of grandeur.
Right. The sources mention things like the focus on loud applause, fake bravado, crowd size, seeing those as examples of creating inner importance or overestimation of virtues.
Which is the excess potential pendulums love.
Precisely. And Johnson seems to deflate that.
How does he do it? That's the million-dollar question.
Well, often by just calmly pointing out the absurdity. Like the example where Trump claimed he'd lowered drug prices by 1,000%.
Right, I remember that bit.
Johnson just deadpans, lowering drug prices 100% means it's free. It's not an attack. It's just logic.
Yeah.
A surgical strike of deadpan truth.
Uh-huh.
It exposes the distortion of reality without getting emotional. It instantly reduces the importance of that inflated claim.
I loved the metaphor the source used. Johnson calmly pointed out that the emperor's hair is made of cotton candy. That feels like exactly what he's doing.
It's a perfect metaphor, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about debunking the myth, removing the halo. Pendulums often rely on these attractive masks, projecting strength, genius, whatever.
Right.
When Johnson points out the cotton candy, he makes the illusion obvious. And once you see it, it's hard to unsee. It damages the pendulum's image, the thing it uses to draw people in.
And he uses other descriptions too, right? Like calling Trump your uncle on Facebook with worse spelling and nuclear codes.
Yes, or like a malfunctioning appliance.
Huh. Okay, how do those reduce importance?
Well, think about it. They bring the figure down to a very relatable, almost mundane, sometimes frustrating level. An annoying uncle, a broken toaster. It completely strips away the intended grandeur.
Yeah, you don't feel awe or fear towards a malfunctioning appliance, just annoyance.
Exactly. It replaces the high-stakes emotion the pendulum wants with something much lower energy, much less significant. It makes the persona less capable of generating the excess potential. It's changing your attitude towards it, just like transurfing suggests.
Okay, so reducing importance is one big piece, but there's also this idea of him being a detached observer. The source says he just sat there, face unbothered, voice unshaken, laying out the ridiculousness like it was part of a sociology lecture.
That's a great description. And it perfectly mirrors the transurfing idea of achieving a state of emptiness. Not vacant, but disentangled. When you're in that state, the pendulum can't catch on to you. It needs that emotional hook, that engagement. Without it, it falls through empty space. You're not playing its game.
And he seems to do this even with things designed to provoke a reaction, like the Obama birtherism stuff or the MLK files thing mentioned in the sources. He doesn't really give an emotional response.
Right. He's following that advice to not allow any negative information into your layer or not become interested in it in a way that feeds it energy.
So it's not ignorance, it's strategic indifference.
It's ignoring in the specific transurfing sense. You acknowledge it's there, perhaps, but you don't let your energy flow towards it on its frequency. You don't give it the emotional fuel or the importance it's seeking. You refuse to engage on its terms.
It really comes down to truth, doesn't it? The sources say it's not the volume that destroys, it's the accuracy. And when your greatest comedic weapon is the truth.
Absolutely. Pendulums often rely on distorted realities, on hype, on narratives that aren't quite factual. When Johnson just calmly presents the unvarnished truth, it creates dissonance. It clashes with the pendulum's frequency, its preferred narrative. It's like throwing a wrench in the works. It makes the pendulum fall off rhythm. Truth, delivered calmly, doesn't feed it. It disrupts it. It pulls away the curtain.
And you see that disruption in the audience reaction the sources describe, that progression from stifled gasps to awkward laughter, and then that slow dawning realization, wait a second, he's actually right.
Yes. That's not just getting a laugh. That reaction shows a real shift is happening in the audience's perception. It undermines the pendulum's hold because people are starting to see through the illusion. It's like the source says it rearranges my worldview. It's a cognitive shift away from emotional reaction towards detached understanding. That's how you break the pendulum spell.
Which brings us right back to that big question. We've laid out how incredibly well Johnson's whole approach seems to map onto these transurfing ideas, starving the pendulum, reducing importance, detached observation. It's almost textbook.
It really is remarkably aligned.
So the question for you listening is, do you think this is conscious? Is Josh Johnson aware of reality transurfing, thinking about pendulums and excess potential, and deliberately using these techniques? Or is this something deeper, more intuitive, a kind of innate genius for seeing through and dismantling powerful structures without needing the instruction manual?
It's fascinating either way, isn't it? Because his quiet execution, as the sources call it, undeniably works to starve the pendulum of the importance and emotional energy it needs.
Right.
He doesn't fight it head on. He induces that dissonant frequency, exposes the illusion of grandeur, and lets it collapse. Whether he knows the theory or just embodies the practice, the effect seems clear.
Yeah, I mean, this whole deep dive really highlights a different kind of power, doesn't it? The power of staying calm, sticking to the truth, and strategically not engaging, even when something feels overwhelming. It's dismantling, not demolition.
Very much so. And understanding these dynamics, how pendulums gain power through importance, how detachment can disarm them well, that knowledge itself can be pretty powerful.
So maybe a final thought for you to take away. The next time you feel drawn into something that's demanding your emotional energy, demanding you give it huge importance, maybe it's an online argument, a news cycle, even just a persistent worry. Perhaps pause and think about Josh Johnson's surgical precision. Could you maybe starve that pendulum instead of feeding it? It's something to consider.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Well, what did you think? Let me know in the comments. I'll give instructions in the description. And by the way, we are starting a new cohort very soon. I'm believing it's the beginning of September. So keep an eye out for that. All right, take care.